What if I told you that one of the greatest novels ever written wasn't actually about crime or punishment at all, but about the most fundamental question of human existence? What makes us truly human? Today, we're diving deep into Fyodor Dostoevsky's masterpiece that has haunted readers for over 150 years, revealing psychological truths so raw and profound they'll change how you see yourself and the world around you. Fyodor Dostoevsky penned Crime and Punishment in 1866 during one of the most turbulent periods of his life. Writing under crushing financial pressure and personal despair, the Russian author created what many consider the first true psychological thriller. This wasn't just another novel about a murderer. It was a revolutionary exploration of the human psyche that would fundamentally change literature forever. Set in the suffocating heat of St. Petersburg's summer, the story follows Raskolnikov, a former law student whose brilliant mind has become his greatest enemy. Dostoevsky drew from his own experiences of poverty, imprisonment, and spiritual crisis to craft a narrative that feels almost uncomfortably real. The author's time in Siberian prison camps gave him unprecedented insight into the criminal mind, while his own struggles with epilepsy and gambling addiction infused the work with authentic psychological depth. What makes this novel extraordinary isn't its plot, but its unflinching examination of conscience, guilt, and redemption. Dostoevsky believed that suffering was the pathway to spiritual awakening, and he wove this philosophy into every page. The book challenges readers to confront uncomfortable truths about morality, justice, and the nature of evil itself. Written during Russia's period of social upheaval, it captures the intellectual ferment of a generation questioning traditional values while searching for new meaning in an increasingly complex world. Rodion Raskolnikov, a brilliant but impoverished former law student, lives in a cramped attic room in St. Petersburg. Petersburg, consumed by a dangerous theory, he believes that extraordinary individuals have the right to transgress moral boundaries for the greater good. To test this philosophy, he murders an elderly pawnbroker named Alyona Ivanovna, justifying the act as eliminating a worthless parasite who exploits the poor. However, Raskolnikov's carefully planned crime spirals into chaos when he's forced to kill the woman's innocent half-sister, Lizaveta, who unexpectedly returns. The psychological aftermath proves far more devastating than any physical evidence. Guilt, paranoia, and fever consume him as he struggles to maintain his facade of normalcy while the investigation intensifies. Enter Porfiry Petrovich, the shrewd investigating magistrate who engages Raskolnikov in a series of psychological cat-and-mouse games. Porfiry suspects Raskolnikov but lacks concrete evidence, instead relying on intellectual sparring to break down the young man's defences. Meanwhile, Raskolnikov's relationships with his devoted sister Dunya, self-sacrificing Mother Pulcheria, and the compassionate prostitute Sonia Marmeladova become lifelines in his descent into madness. The novel's true power lies not in the crime itself, but in its exploration of moral responsibility and spiritual redemption. Sonia, despite her circumstances, maintains unwavering faith and becomes the catalyst for Raskolnikov's eventual confession. Through her love and Christian devotion, she guides him towards acknowledging his guilt and accepting the possibility of resurrection through suffering. The story culminates not with punishment, but with the promise of renewal and the recognition that love and faith can triumph over intellectual pride and moral isolation. The first pivotal event occurs when Raskolnikov overhears a conversation between two men discussing the pawnbroker Alyona Ivanovna. They describe her as a worthless creature whose death would benefit humanity by freeing up her wealth for charitable purposes. This conversation crystallizes Raskolnikov's brewing theory about extraordinary individuals being above conventional morality. The moment represents the dangerous intersection of abstract philosophy and real-world application, showing how intellectual concepts can become justifications for horrific actions. The murder itself unfolds with methodical precision that quickly dissolves into chaos. Raskolnikov enters the pawnbroker's apartment under the pretense of pawning a watch, then strikes Alyona with an axe. The calculated nature of the crime reflects his belief in his own superiority and control. However, when Lizaveta unexpectedly returns, forcing him to commit a second murder, his carefully constructed plan crumbles. This moment illustrates the unpredictable nature of evil and how one transgression inevitably leads to another. Raskolnikov's psychological disintegration begins immediately after the murders. He experiences fever delirium, and paranoia that manifest in his increasingly erratic behaviour. His inability to eat, sleep, or function normally reveals the profound disconnect between his intellectual justifications and his human conscience. The physical symptoms mirror his spiritual sickness, demonstrating that the human psyche cannot compartmentalize evil without consequences. The introduction of Porfiry Petrovich marks the beginning of the novel's most psychologically complex sequences. The investigating magistrate employs sophisticated psychological warfare, engaging Raskolnikov in philosophical discussions about crime and punishment while carefully probing his reactions. Their conversations become intellectual duels where Porfiry uses Raskolnikov's own theories against him, gradually exposing the contradictions in his reasoning. These encounters reveal that true justice operates on multiple levels, combining legal investigation with moral examination. Sonia Marmeladova's entry into the narrative introduces the novel's spiritual dimension. Despite being forced into prostitution to support her family, she maintains profound religious faith and moral purity. Her relationship with Raskolnikov becomes the story's emotional core, representing the possibility of redemption through love and sacrifice. When she reads the biblical story of Lazarus to Raskolnikov, it foreshadows his eventual spiritual resurrection. The confrontation between Raskolnikov and Svidrigailov, his sister's former employer, presents a dark mirror of the protagonist's potential future. Svidrigailov represents what Raskolnikov might become if he continues down his path of moral nihilism. Their interactions explore themes of libertinism, despair, and the consequences of abandoning moral constraints. Svidrigailov's eventual suicide serves as a warning about the ultimate destination of unchecked evil. Raskolnikov's gradual confession unfolds through multiple stages, beginning with his partial admission to Sonia and culminating in his formal surrender to authorities. This process reveals the novel's central theme that true punishment comes from within, not from external forces. His decision to confess represents not defeat, but the beginning of spiritual awakening, showing that acknowledgement of guilt is the first step toward redemption. The epilogue, set in a Siberian prison camp, completes Raskolnikov's transformation. His time in prison becomes a period of spiritual rebirth rather than mere punishment. Through Sonia's continued devotion and his own suffering, he discovers the possibility of genuine repentance and renewal. This resolution emphasizes Dostoevsky's belief that redemption is always possible through love, faith, and the acceptance of human limitations. The most profound lesson from crime and punishment is that intellectual pride, unchecked by moral humility, leads to spiritual destruction. Raskolnikov's brilliant mind becomes his greatest liability when he believes his intelligence places him above moral law. This teaches us that true wisdom requires acknowledging our limitations and connecting with something greater than ourselves. Intelligence without compassion becomes a dangerous weapon that ultimately destroys its wielder. The novel demonstrates that actions have consequences that extend far beyond their immediate effects. Raskolnikov discovers that committing murder doesn't just affect his victims, but fundamentally alters his relationship with reality itself. Every subsequent interaction becomes tainted by his secret guilt, showing how single decisions can reshape entire lives. This reminds us that moral choices create ripple effects that touch every aspect of our existence. Dostoevsky illustrates that true punishment comes from internal conscience rather than external forces. Raskolnikov's greatest torment isn't fear of arrest, but the psychological weight of his actions. His fever, paranoia, and inability to function normally represent his soul's rejection of evil. This reveals that we cannot escape the moral consequences of our choices, even when we believe we've rationalized them successfully. The transformative power of love emerges as one of the novel's most hopeful messages. Sonia's unwavering compassion for Raskolnikov, despite knowing his crimes, demonstrates love's ability to reach even the most hardened hearts. Her influence gradually breaks down his intellectual barriers and reconnects him with his humanity. This shows that genuine love can overcome pride, guilt, and despair when freely given without conditions. The story emphasizes that redemption requires acknowledging our failures and accepting responsibility for our actions. Raskolnikov's healing begins only when he stops justifying his crimes and admits his guilt. This process of confession and repentance becomes the foundation for spiritual renewal. The lesson here is that true growth requires honest self-examination and the courage to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Dostoevsky reveals that suffering, while painful, can become a pathway to wisdom and spiritual growth. Raskolnikov's torment after the murders, though agonizing, ultimately leads to his transformation. Similarly, Sonia's difficult circumstances don't destroy her faith but strengthen her capacity for compassion. This suggests that our struggles, when approached with the right perspective, can become opportunities for deeper understanding and character development. The novel shows that isolation and alienation intensify psychological distress, while connection and community provide healing. Raskolnikov's withdrawal from family and friends exacerbates his mental turmoil, while his eventual openness to Sonia's love begins his recovery. This emphasizes the fundamental human need for authentic relationships and the danger of prideful self-sufficiency. Perhaps most importantly, Crime and Punishment teaches that no one is beyond redemption. Even someone capable of murder can find forgiveness and renewal through genuine repentance and love. Raskolnikov's transformation from murderer to penitent illustrates the possibility of fundamental change in human nature. This offers hope that no matter how far we've fallen, the opportunity for redemption remains available. The relationship between theory and practice receives careful examination throughout the novel. Raskolnikov's abstract philosophizing about superior individuals crumbles when confronted with the reality of murder. This demonstrates the danger of divorcing intellectual concepts from their real-world implications and the importance of grounding our ideas in practical wisdom and moral consideration. Finally, the novel suggests that true justice encompasses both legal and spiritual dimensions. While Raskolnikov faces legal consequences for his crimes, his real punishment and eventual redemption occur on a deeper spiritual level. This indicates that justice isn't merely about punishment, but about restoration and the possibility of moral renewal. Crime and Punishment stands as one of literature's most powerful explorations of human psychology and moral complexity. Dostoevsky created more than a crime novel. He crafted a profound meditation on the nature of evil, redemption, and what it means to be human. The book's enduring relevance lies in its unflinching examination of universal themes that continue to resonate with readers across cultures and generations. The novel's psychological realism revolutionized literature by demonstrating that internal conflict could be as dramatic and compelling as external action. Raskolnikov's mental journey from pride to despair to redemption maps the territory of the human soul with unprecedented precision. Dostoevsky's insights into guilt, conscience, and the possibility of renewal remain as fresh and relevant today as they were 150 years ago. What makes this work truly exceptional is its refusal to provide easy answers or moral shortcuts. Instead, it challenges readers to grapple with difficult questions about justice, morality, and the possibility of change. The novel suggests that true understanding comes not from intellectual analysis alone, but from engaging with life's complexities through both reason and compassion. Ultimately, Crime and Punishment offers a message of hope wrapped in unflinching honesty about human nature. It reminds us that while we are capable of great evil, we are also capable of profound transformation through love, suffering, and the courage to face truth about ourselves. This masterpiece continues to illuminate the human condition, offering insights that can guide us through our own moral struggles and toward a deeper understanding of what it means to live an authentic, meaningful life.